I'm with my friend JR, and we are in South Orlando, and JR is doing the unthinkable. He is growing cold chill apple or long chill apples in Orlando. We're going to bring you along and we're going to show you what JR is doing that allows him to grow these apples down here.
All right, so go on and follow me and we'll tell you what we have here in our front yard. This is a really recent addition, I think 2 days ago. This is an Odin apple.
Okay.
So I think it's from Europe, and it has flowered even at this stage. It's just that when it bloomed, there were no other trees around for pollination.
Yeah.
But this is something that definitely produces early, and it's on a precocious rootstock known as Butagavsky 9. Or Bud 9.
Bud 9, so it's going to stay a small tree.
It will.
Now, a lot of people at home that don't know and they're just kind of watching this for the first time, how big does Bud 9 typically get? Say 10 years down the road, what are we looking at?
At the largest size, you're looking at a tree that's going to stay between 8 to 10 feet tall if left unpruned. Yes.
So you're talking about just this tall,
Yep.
and that's it, maybe as tall as that?
Yeah, something that you can reach with your hands, standing in the ground, and it's easy to pick, easy to manage, easy to control.
All right, well, JR, you mentioned that this just flowered and it didn't have anything around to pollinate it. Have you thought about maybe keeping pollen in the freezer?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that we try to do, especially getting in contact with one of our good friends, Stephen Edholm from Skill Cult.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been talking to Stephen.
Yeah. He's been doing great over there in California, and we want to promote his mission, what he's doing, and part of that is actually purchasing material from his store. One of the things we do, we buy pollen and we store it in the freezer, so if there is an apple that is really prolific and blooms, but there's nothing else at that time, and we still want to get fruit from it,
you can hand pollinate.
We can go ahead and hand pollinate it, and we've been successful doing that as well.
Maybe throw some crosses in there, save some seeds.
We have done that too. So once we go into the backyard, we're going to take a look at those like mad scientist experiments that we're doing. Nothing at Stephen's level, but we're still trying some good stuff.
Also want to add this, that JR, a few months back, whenever I found out he was growing these apples in Orlando, I immediately called this guy and I'm like, dude, you've got to tell me what you are doing. I want to come down there, I want to talk with you, I want to do an interview. And he was telling me that he was kind of following what Stephen at Skill Cult was doing. And JR has some additional scion wood for some red-fleshed apples that Stephen is breeding. And he gifted those to me, and now I've got that on a rootstock. I've added it to my collection, and I am also going to be doing some apple breeding, trying to breed a southern red-fleshed apple.
That's great.
Yeah, I appreciate you sending that to me.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure.
Let's go see what else you got going on.
There's more where that came from. Just follow me.
Is this a fruit tree?
No, this is a tababuia tree. Is native of Brazil and the tropics.
Okay.
There are two main colors, one with yellow flowers and one with pink flowers. So when they are blooming in as early as January and February, they look like the Japanese cherry blossom trees. That's how beautiful those flowers are. And this one is the pink version. It doesn't change colors, so basically when you have cold fronts in late December, early January, pretty much all of the leaves are going to drop without changing colors. They'll have the bare branches, and then a few weeks later you'll see the buds coming out, and then the profusion of blooms, whether there are yellow blooms or pink blooms, and they last for a couple of weeks.
Now I have to ask him these questions because I'm not from a subtropical area, so I don't know any of these plants that they have down here.
Right, and that's part of the fun of living in Orlando, because we're right there at the border between tropical and not so tropical, so we can get away with, say, growing like mangoes in the same environment that we can grow peaches and nectarines.
Yeah, you can kind of push the zone, maybe protect some of the really cold sensitive stuff. And then some stuff you can plant in wide open and it do okay.
Right, we have to do that with the mangoes because those are sensitive down to below 40 degrees. So they really start suffering when the temperatures go below that. One thing that we did, and it worked for us last winter, is that it started blooming before a cold front came through. So what I did is I actually pruned all of those new blooms that were coming out. The cold front came by, And then after it passed and it was safe, the tree just went ahead and rebloomed, and then it gave us some mangoes. So we were happy that we didn't have to lose the crop due to that cold snap.
Well, what else are you growing here for apples?
All right, so originally these guys were single variety apples. So this is a Roxbury russet.
Okay.
It's one of the original varieties planted in the United States, and it comes from Massachusetts, probably early 1600s. And little by little, I was tinkering with grafting some varieties in different branches. So for instance, I have Akane here, which is a Japanese variety.
Okay.
I have Egremont russet, which is an English variety. I have Waltana, which is from California, one of the ones developed by Albert Eder.
Okay.
I have Hyde King, which is another variety, an heirloom variety. And I also grafted Melrose over here. So I wanted to incorporate different varieties to see if we can have like pollination
Sure.
from the same tree, because most apples aren't so fruitful. There are some varieties that can fruit without a pollinator, and you have, for instance, depending on the climate, you may have something like Cox's Orange Pippin, you may have Fuji.
My shell will bear fruit without a cross-pollinator.
Yeah.
Not a good crop, but it will.
Right. Because obviously you need the pollination in order for the fruit to develop the seeds, and then the seeds regulate the hormones that control the growth of the apple.
Okay.
So you always get bigger fruit when there's pollination.
Yeah. Now, JR was telling us everything that he's grafted onto this tree. And that's one of the things, if you're going to do a backyard orchard, backyard fruit culture, get into grafting. That way you can put 10 varieties on one tree, and you don't have to have 10 trees lined out. And you may only get 3 or 4 apples off of that tree, but at least you get to sample that variety, and it's really great.
Exactly. So, and that's why we can get away with so many different varieties, even though this is a project that we started back in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic, and we were here, we were at home, we really couldn't go anywhere, and we decided, since we're going to do this, let's go ahead and put these different types of apples and see how they do. And we have them on a variety of rootstocks, but for the most part, the rootstocks have to be adaptable to our soil. The soil here in this area stays wet, especially during the summertime, when we have rain almost every day. And then this basically swamps. It turns into a small lake, and most fruit trees will not tolerate that.
So do you have to mound up and plant on top of the mound and let the roots go down?
That's part of what we do, and then also we plant in raised beds so that the root crown of the tree stays above grade, and therefore the water can drain away better than it would if it was heavy soil.
Looks like you got some nice little lantana in there.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that we could bring different types of pollinators. The butterflies just love them.
Sure.
The oleander moth also comes around here.
Okay.
It's kind of like a rare sight, but we see them. So yeah, rootstocks, just like this Bodagovsky 9, we have Bud 118, which is another one of the Bodagovsky series. This one, if it didn't have any competition, it would probably get really, really tall, about 20, 25 feet, because that's a semi-standard. We have Geneva 890. That is my favorite rootstock because it's the largest of the Geneva series, but also it's precocious. You can get fruit in 2 to 3 years after planting, which is great. Sometimes the very next year, depending on the cultivar.
Yeah.
It resists Phytophthora root rot. It is resistant against fire blight. It adapts to both the cold and the heat. They are using it in different places. They use them in Mexico. They use them in Brazil. So this is something that definitely it's a home run on part of the Cornell Geneva series.
And how tall does this get? Is this a dwarfing or semi-dwarfing?
This is a semi-dwarf. Estimates are anywhere in between 50 to 65% of standard if you leave them on prune.
So looking at a 10 to 12 foot tree?
You're talking in somewhere between 12 to 15 feet tall.
12 to 15, okay.
Somewhere around there. But of course, I can always control the size of the trees by pruning. So my biggest concern with a rootstock, other than the size, is whether it's going to resist the soil, where it's going to be planted, and the climate in which it lives. This one is actually one of the trees that has maybe like a couple of them.
Now what do you have here? You got fruit on this tree.
Yeah, this tree originally is a summer Rambo, which is a French variety developed Summer Rambo, yes.
Okay.
Was developed in the 1500s. Rumor has it that this tree was actually the inspiration for the naming of the Rambo character in the
Really?
First Blood series, yes.
Wow.
So, just like the other tree that I pointed out before, I started tinkering with the branches and I grafted multiple varieties. So we have Pink Lady, and this is one of the Pink Ladies that's growing,
Look at
although
that.
it's been damaged by some kind of worm or something like that,
Yeah.
which is a shame. We actually had some earlier in the season and we picked them, so they were pretty good. We also have a Red Free, which is a variety from Purdue Rutgers University of Illinois, so the PRI program.
So that is really a high chill apple.
Yep, and it produces every year. It
Really?
always gives us something, which is fantastic. We have Kandil Sanap, which is an apple from Turkey. This one has been a little bit of a dud. It grows. It has some spur wood here and there, but we haven't seen any action. And then the one apple that's currently growing here, it's supposed to be a yellow bellflower, which is a variety from New Jersey, 1700s. So it's an heirloom apple.
Now I have to say, I don't know most of all these varieties he's naming off because these are all high chill apples. So I just ruled them out and I never even looked at growing high chill apples where I'm at, much less down in Orlando. Now I'm going to ask JR what he's doing to cause these things to fruit in a little bit. We're going to continue this tour. We're going to see what he's growing, and we're going to go into some different areas and really talk about his techniques.
And so you guys, if you want to go by the
Yeah,
Espalier
look at
road.
this.
Yeah.
Wow, and that's a neat little lizard you got growing. Never seen one with that design.
Yeah. So over here we have an original tree of a French variety of apple that's called Calvo Blanc. I think that there might even be one that just kind of grew
It's trying.
exactly yeah, out of one of the late blooms in summer, probably like an August flower or something like that. But it did give us a crop earlier in the season. It's a nice big apple with the 5 defined lobes at the bottom. It's really beautiful. Good for cooking. It's tart, kind of like not to my taste, but my wife loves it.
Look at the structure, how he's growing this. In a raised bed, you can see the graft union right here. Are you also growing this on a bud variety?
This one is on Geneva 935.
Okay, so you can see how he structured it up to a trellis, and then he has selected branches, bent the branches in the directions that he's wanting to go, forming a type of espalier. Right?
Yep.
And then off of these espaliers, he's done different grafts. Look at this cleft graft he did right here. You can see that definitely, it looks like it was a fresh graft because you still got some grafting tape on there, so I'm assuming that's a this year's graft.
Yeah, it was a graft that I did probably in late June, early July, and this one is a red flesh variety. It's called
What?
Red Devil.
Really?
Yes.
So
So
it looks great. Look at the red stems on that. You can tell the red flesh varieties a little bit better because they have a little red flesh on there.
right, and that's
the
due
bark.
to the anthocyanins, which is the pigment that causes the trees in the fall to change into reddish colors.
Now you can see this one is not a red flesh. It's more of a yellow or green bark. When you put it right up against that red, you can tell there's something different
Yep.
going between those two.
So I got a few interesting varieties here. I have Williams Pride grafted to it. This one is really interesting because I am originally from Puerto Rico, and a friend of mine, Derek Mills from Logan, Ohio, he sent me this scion of a variety that was growing wild in the mountains of Puerto Rico.
Wow, wow.
And it doesn't have a name because it's a USDA collection. So he sent it to me and I wanted to try it out. It's this one right here. And I named it Boriken, which is the Taino name that the natives gave to the island of Puerto Rico. That's just an unofficial name for me to know. But this one is something that, wow, I really want to grow and see if we can get some fruit. Hopefully this coming season. It might have,
that one's special to
yeah,
you.
it might have a few areas where it can give us a few flowers, and I'll definitely try to pollinate it to see how it does down here in the south.
Yeah, that's exciting. An apple from Puerto Rico.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. All right, well, what other varieties are you growing here?
Well, over here I have Eve's Delight. This is a
I love the way you've espaliered this one. Come off real short, and then you got 4 main trunks coming up, and then once you get up here, you've got a couple of side shoots. So it's a fan?
It's a fan. It's the shape that it turned out to want to grow into. I didn't really plan it to be that way, but that's the beauty of growing these apples and letting them do what they do. That sometimes they'll give you ideas, and you can turn them into these beautiful forms, and then the function and just something that you didn't even think you could make out of it, it's giving you this beautiful arrangement.
Now, you're growing really intense here. I've noticed you've got your trees, 24, 36 inches apart?
Right. And the reason I have to do that is because I don't live in an area where I have a lot of space.
Yeah.
So many years ago, by following the videos from Dave Wilson Nursery, I learned about backyard orchard culture.
Yep.
Basically planting many varieties in a small space and keeping them short so that you can have more variety and you can grow what you want, and you don't have to worry about having big space because you can still have a different combinations of fruits into smaller areas, and that's what we try to do here.
Well, and who really needs a full-size tree where you're getting 2,000 pounds of apples when you can grow trees 2-3 foot apart? You can grow 20 varieties that you have right here, and you can get 2 or 3 apples of each one, which is plenty for snacking.
Absolutely. And as they get older, they will start to become more and more prolific. So I may have to actually control how much fruit comes out of it because it'll be too overwhelming for us at one given time.
Now, I've noticed you got one stalk here. This one is really putting on a lot of good growth this year. What variety is that?
So this is an old French variety called Médaille d'Or, so it translates into gold medal. It's a cider apple. It has the greatest content of tannin of any cider apple variety that is considered to be bittersweet.
Okay.
So it has also plenty of sugar, and it's a fantastic apple. So that's the tree here. It's grafted on Geneva 890, which is my favorite rootstock.
Okay.
However, I also threw a little bit of a curveball in here, and this is something that's very special to me.
Look at that. Look at those colors.
This is my own red flesh seedling.
Really?
Yes.
And it hasn't fruited for you yet?
This is the first year where I grafted it. So you can see that even in the first year, it already has a couple of fruiting spurs. In fact, right here, you can see fruiting and fruiting and fruiting. So for next year, we hope to get them, and we know it's red flesh.
Sure.
Because it came from a red flesh apple, and I think that I used the pollen from a red flesh apple in order to pollinate it. So it inherited that trait. We already know
what the crosses are.
I think that it's probably between Red Devil and Pink Parfait.
Oh, okay. So maybe you get some really good coloring in there.
Exactly.
So you saved this seed. You grew this seed out in a pot?
So what we do is that we stratify it.
Yep.
So we do the cold stratification. We grow it inside the fridge for a period of 2-3 months. And then we take it out of the fridge. We can see that the seed just basically grows that little tail.
Yep.
And then we put it in a pot. It grows. And it grew the year before, but this is the first year where I grafted it here.
So you grew it from a seed one year. Mm-hmm. You took a cutting of the scion and you grafted it onto your rooting rootstock. And then instead of waiting 7 and 8 years to get an apple from a seedling, you could potentially get an apple directly from a seedling in 2 years.
Absolutely. And that's great because what happens is that when you plant a seedling, it goes through a juvenility period that can last for a very long time. But when you graft onto a rootstock that's already established, you can shorten that juvenility period.
It's getting the hormones to make it think that it's a 7 to 10 year old tree.
Exactly. And this one is not even a 7-year-old tree. This was planted again back in 2020.
But the Geneva 890 rootstock thinks that it's a mature tree.
Because it will, exactly, it will go ahead and tell the tree, you already overcame the juvenility period, you can go ahead and produce fruit, let's get going.
Yep, okay.
Over here, this tree, I grew it myself. Originally, it's a black gillyflower. It's called a sheep nose. That's the name. Literally, it's an apple that when you look at it from the front, it looks like the nose of, like of a sheep. And it has sort of like a clove flavor, but when it's really ripe, it has like this baked potato consistency. Not a lot of people like that. You have to pick it while it's still green, and it'll still have the flavor, but it'll have a little bit more juice. It'll be crunchier. Just like with many of the other trees, I grafted a couple of varieties. This one here in particular is one of Steve and Edholm's. This is black strawberry.
Oh, you gave that one to me, and I've got it growing on a rootstock. I grafted it, and it's growing pretty good. I'm excited to get it into the orchard.
Yeah, it's very precocious, so I'm pretty sure that if you got it on a rootstock that is vigorous, you will get fruit, if not the next year, the year after that.
Just from the looks of that apple, I can't wait to breed pollen from this and start my own crossbreeding.
Yeah, that's another thing. This is another one of my red flesh crosses that I have. This one over here, this one right there, that one.
This one?
This one right here. This guy.
Flower.
So that one is a seedling of Lucy Glow.
Okay.
So I don't know what the cross is. I just basically took a seed and grew it from seed. But again, just like this is a graft from this year. So you can see the precocity that is being imparted by the rootstock, in which it has all of those spurs ready to go.
Spurs. And then you've got another little seedling kind of stuck in.
Yeah, that one is a King David.
Yeah, King David. I've heard of that one.
So I will show you a couple of fruits of King David that we have going on right now. They're over here on this tree. This tree was originally, it's still a Benet Rouge, which is a French cider variety, but I wasn't supposed to get that tree. Like the company where I bought it from sent it to me mistakenly, and I still put it in the ground. It's on Geneva 935, and I grafted Bramley seedling, which is an English pie apple. Every year gives us something.
Really?
It's supposed to be from England, but it fruits very well here in Orlando.
How long have you been growing apples?
Since 2020 at this location.
Okay.
In an earlier location where I used to live, for the most part, I tinkered with stone fruits, and I had a couple of apples here and there, but nothing really major. And I still got some of them from like Pettingill, which is a low chill apple from California. I think I maybe had a Fuji at some point, but I wasn't really into apples at that time.
Okay.
So over here you can see these are a couple of stray King Davids. They're like really small. They're not quite ready yet. They are supposed to get like really burgundy, and that's when you want to get them because they're going to be at peak ripeness and flavor.
Now, how can you tell when your apples are ready down here? Do you wait for them to fall off the tree? Or do you just kind of look at the turn and know?
I have sort of a volunteer that's called Spouse that helps me test them. And sometimes I have to tell her, wait, let's wait till they're a little bit riper. It's just like, no, I mean, I think that they're ready to go. And many times she's right, and sometimes I'm like, I told you so. I'm not supposed to say that on YouTube, but and she helps me a lot with all the stuff that we are doing. She's great. Right now she's busy, otherwise she would have been here with us. But yeah, and this is something we like to do.
You've got a lot of varieties growing on this one tree here also.
Yeah, so it has Bramleys, it has this is something I grafted this year that it's called Strawberry Parfait. I got Algmene, which is Cox's orange pipping seedling from Germany, and look at this. I literally grafted this on a scion that was about this size of this stem. I'm serious. That was the width of that stem where I grafted it here. And this is like maybe close to half of the canopy. It's half of the canopy of that tree. And it's loaded with spurs everywhere.
And I noticed you're starting to train some of the branches down to cause fruiting. Now, a lot of people that don't know and maybe watching this and are not apple growers, when you bend these branches down, what you're doing is you're changing the hormones that are in those branches. If they're up, it's wanting to continue the growth up. Once you bring them down, that changes the hormones to a fruiting hormone.
Right, and it makes them to more productive.
Yeah.
So when you have, like you said, a really vertical tree, the production is going to be minimal because the tree is not having enough of the sunlight and on the hormones to tell the tree, hey, it's time to produce fruit on these branches. Mm-hmm. But over here, you can see that they are naturally horizontal. The fruit load that they had earlier this year trained them to bend like this, and
Yes.
that's how they stayed. So I never pulled them down. I never did anything other than the original training, and then they did that on their own.
So is this natural?
That is absolutely natural.
Wow.
Natural curving.
Yeah, look at that. That's great.
Almost like a weeping apple.
All right. Well, let's see what you got in the backyard.
All right. So let's have a little tour into the chaos. All right. So let's go over here.